Hello, my name is Elias Corpus, and tonight I have the opportunity to talk to you all about insurance and investing. So, tonight, some just basics that we're going to talk about are number one, some insurance basics around auto insurance, renter's insurance, and homeowners insurance. We're going to talk about really the power and the leverage of life insurance, talk about disability income or how to protect really your most important asset. And then lastly, we're going to talk about how to save and invest for the future. So believe it or not, as he said, insurance is going to play a huge part in where we're going to start is really what we call understanding really the three buckets of money. So the three buckets of money basically look like this for most people. So you have your income, so what you earn on a day-to-day basis. You have the assets, the things that you own or belong to you. It could be equity in a home, could be savings accounts, could be investment accounts, could be anything along those lines that you deem as an asset that has value. Then you have your insurance. So we always talk about that your insurance bucket of money should always be bigger than your income bucket and your asset bucket. That way, in the event that anything would ever happen, the insurance bucket's really the most attractive. So that way we make sure that everything that you've worked really hard for has the ability to continuously be protected long term. That's really what insurance is for. So as we break that down a little bit more, from a car insurance perspective, the really the most important parts of your coverage are going to be your liability insurance, which is going to help protect other people. Your deductibles, to always make sure that you know what they are and that you can afford to come out of pocket to pay them. Your uninsured, underinsured motorists, because that's really what protects you. In the state of Missouri, there's what's called a minimum liability insurance, and typically it's not going to be enough to cover any injuries, to cover repairs of a vehicle. So you don't want to be able to drive around without having the ability to ensure that you are protected and you're doing that on your own. And that's what your uninsured, underinsured motorist really protects. In addition to that, you also have medical payments on your policy. And then you could also be looking at covering rental and towing. Again, insurance, whether it's car, home, life, is really to protect you against the what if, but it's also to ensure that you have protection on the back end. So again, all the things that you worked for, you saved for, and you're planning for long term can still happen without rear-ending somebody and not having enough coverage to pay for that through insurance. On your renters or home, same rule applies. So again, you have your liability insurance, which is going to help cover. And again, this is really important, especially if you have kids, right? Kid friends, you always come over, could be jumping up and down on trampolines, kid fall down some stairs. Whatever that may be, you want to make sure that you have something in place that if any of those accidents happen, right, that's why we can make sure that things get paid out and are covered properly. Your personal property is another really big one. That protects all your stuff. So imagine if you would take your home or your apartment or wherever you currently live and you dump that thing upside down. Everything that fell out of that home is what belongs to you. So those are those things that you need to make sure that you also have coverage for. Imagine if you had a fire, or imagine a theft and having to replace everything, at that one moment in time. It'd be very expensive, and most people don't consider that. So what you want to make sure you do is have enough personal property, but you're doing it at a replacement value, not an actual cash value. There's a big difference. Depreciation, you want to take that out of the conversation. And that's what replacement coverage really helps you to do. Medical payments, same thing. And then on the special endorsements, there are some things that may be higher value. So let's say that you are a photographer and you have a lot of photography equipment that's, hanging out in an office in your house or, in a side room or whatever that may be. Depending on your type of policy that you own, there could be restrictions on what's covered. But you can add what's called a special endorsement to your policy to ensure that it's being covered and protected for the amount that it's actually worth. Jewelry is another big one that we see a lot. But then, computer equipment, photography equipment, jewelry, those are typically the big ones that we see. But again, on the homeowners and renters side, it's important just to make sure that all the basic pieces are buttoned up, because that can make a big difference in regards to liability, what you come out of pocket for, but then what you have to end up replacing if you don't have the right amount of insurance to cover that overall. So then when we take a look at it from a life insurance perspective, again, one of my favorite sayings is that a great retirement plan without life insurance is really a hope and dream that dies when you do. So when you look at life insurance, what life insurance allows you to do is creating a state where number one maybe one didn't exist before. It also allows you to cover any estate taxes on the back end, but more importantly, it allows you to give a tax-free benefit to your beneficiaries to help cover what I would consider to really be the four main reasons why people buy life insurance or should buy life insurance. So number one is typically to help replace or to eliminate any debt. So meaning that if you passed away tomorrow, what obligations do you want to insure or cover? Do you want your mortgage to be taken care of? Any loans or outstanding debts? Debt repayment is typically one of the very first and big things people look for when they purchase life insurance. Number two is college funding. So if you have children or if you want to ensure that their kids go to school, college funding is another big reason why people buy life insurance, because again, it puts money where money didn't exist before, but it allows you to still earmark all the money that you save long-term for the future to still be there how it was designed originally. Number three is income replacement. So imagine you're a husband and wife, or you have a partner, and imagine you are a dual income family. So regardless of what that income is, we all get accustomed to a certain standard of living. So when a spouse passes away, that income goes away with that spouse. So the third reason why people buy life insurance or should buy life insurance is income replacement. How do you ensure that a surviving spouse can still maintain and pay for all the things that they were obligated to do so, don't have to uproot children from a home, continue to make choices when they're ready to, but then also don't have to be forced to go back to work, right away for a lack of cash and a lack of money to actually do that. So income replacement becomes very important, from that side of it as well. And then lastly, the fourth reason why people buy life insurance is really either for a charitable gift giving standpoint or for something we'll talk about later, an ability to generate or gain cash or tax-free, money long-term or tax-favorable money long-term with the use of cash value life insurance, which we'll talk about, here in a few. So the main three types of life insurance policy that you'll see that are out there is number one, term insurance. Term insurance gives you a little bit more bang for your buck. It allows for you to buy a lot of insurance for a minimal amount of cost. The con is that it's the pro is that it's a little bit more cost effective when you purchase it up front. But the con is that it only lasts for a certain amount of time. So think of it in the context of renting, right? So all you're really getting is a roof over your head. You're really not building equity. You're not really building anything long term. But it can eventually end up going away. Typically, the type of policies that are bought are either 10-year, 15, 20, or 30. But again, there is an expiration date, which, again, what really makes term insurance so cost effective is that at some point in time it will expire. Your whole life insurance is the direct opposite. It's like owning. You're building equity. You're building something long-term for the future. You have more money being utilized in that account than you did in term, but it lasts for your entire life, hence the name whole life. This policy lasts as long as you do, versus term expires typically before you do as well. Universal life is kind of what I would call like a hybrid. It gives you the cost effectiveness of term in some respects, but it also gives you the ability to generate and build cash on the other side. There's a couple of different areas that go. You have a standard universal life that just has guarantees across the board. You have what's called an indexed universal life, which is something that follows along to the S&P 500. Then you have a variable type of universal life that is something that follows more of the stock market. But then there's really a fourth one that exists, and that's going to be your group insurance, life insurance. So if you're employed, I always recommend or tell people buy as much as you possibly can through work because it's typically very cost effective. But you also want to make sure that you own your own on the back end, because that life insurance through your employer typically is not portable. So owning something on your own is extremely important as well, because that is something that you can take with you no matter what job or wherever you go overall. So again, life insurance is really a really important part to long-term financial and retirement planning because it allows you, again, to kind of create that estate, allows you to cover any estate taxes on the back end, but then again, it allows you to leave your legacy, your family, whatever your plans are, life insurance rather than leaving them assets that are earmarked for retirement. So that's a big reason there, and it's tax-free. Can't really beat that, right? So then again, the reason why we buy life insurance, we kind of covered that. But there are a lot of living benefits of cash value that can be in there as well. We'll hit on that a little bit later. But the biggest reasons, or I guess when to buy it, is number one, is when you're young and you're healthy. We always talk about that when we talk with young clients. They're never as young and they're never as healthy as they're ever going to be. So, buying it while you're young, buying it while you're healthy helps you keep your rates really low. But it also allows you a little bit more of that to be, down the road. Gives you the ability to designate your beneficiaries. So whether that is a husband or wife, maybe it's an aunt or uncle. We always do talk about, try to stay away from, listing minors as beneficiaries. So anybody under the age of 18, we would tell you not to list them as a beneficiary. And the reason why is that minors cannot inherit at that point. So they would get wrapped up in probate and courts and all those. And by the time they get to the money or they have access to it, it's not going to look the same. So we talk to people and tell them that, wills and trusts really become your best friend. We recommend that you go and you find an attorney that can write a trust up. You can have your beneficiary be the trust, which is what we have a lot of our clients that do that. Just because it kind of eliminates some of the mess, as far as leaving money on the back end, but it actually allows you to be a little bit more specific in how that money is utilized and dispersed out to your family. And then lastly, really kind of a personal initiative that we see is that no more GoFundMe accounts, right? It really gives us the ability to ensure that we're pumping money back into the community, and it gives us the ability to kind of take that responsibility for ourselves and kind of protect what it is overall long term. And really, life insurance really is not as expensive as most people think. I think most people probably overestimate the cost. I mean, really by 40 to almost 60%, which is crazy. But so if we tell you to go out, take a look, see what the costs are for real. But then really the most important piece of that is take some time to really find out how much you actually need. Right. That's a big one. So go through those 4 elements. Understand what it means for you and your family, but then take some time to really invest and to look at life insurance as a very powerful tool for you overall long term. So one of our favorite conversations is really considering what is your biggest asset. For a lot of people, and when we do this, live, we get answers all the way across the board, right? Biggest asset is their home or their property or their investment accounts or the lake house or whatever that may be. But in reality, when we look at what the biggest asset is, it's really your ability to go to work and generate income. So again, if we're talking about retirement, we're talking about investing and putting money away for the future, there's only one thing that can help you do that. And that's ensuring that you still have money coming in to be able to save and put it away. So the biggest asset really breaks down to your ability to wake up every morning, go to work, earn a paycheck, and then learn how to put that money away to help you long term. So what we talk about a lot is really the basics of income protection. And what that means is that it really gives us the ability, or you the ability, to ensure that if something happens to you and you get hurt, or you get sick and you lost your ability to go to work on a day-to-day basis and provide your family or income, how do you ensure that you have money coming in to pay for really your lifestyle, your bills, keep the lights on, you pay for the mortgage, you put food on the table, etc. So there's a couple of different things to consider. So number one, most employers out there will provide you some type of disability income insurance. So whether it's going to be a short-term or whether it's a long-term type benefit. Take advantage of those, right? Because again, if you're buying them at a group rate, you're typically going to find it's a little bit of a lower cost. Most policies that are out there are going to cover anywhere between 60 to 65% on the long term, and maybe 65 to maybe 70% on the short term. Again, take a look at your benefits to really clear that out. But then one big thing to always consider is that going to end up being enough? Now, keep in mind that income protection, no insurance company is ever going to cover 100% of your income, because because at that point there'd be really no reason to incentivize you to go back to work if they're paying you 100% of your money. So the individual plans that you can purchase aside of that really kind of helps you make up any gaps if you have any from an employer-sponsored plan, or if you don't have an employer-sponsored plan at all. So a couple of things to consider is number one, a waiting period. So a waiting period is basically how long you can self-insure before you need the insurance company to start kicking in benefits. So most of the time on a long-term benefit policy, the shortest window is going to be about 30 days. The longest will probably be roughly about 365 days. So you need to be honest with yourself and take a look at, yes, the longer the waiting period, the shorter the lower the premium, but you also have to be you taking consideration of how long you can self-insure before you need insurance companies to kick in and start paying the benefit. The benefit period is basically how long that money is going to last until you either have to go back to work or file another claim or whatever else that may be. And then the actual benefit paid is going to be that percentage of your income on a month-to-month basis. But again, really the most important part of this is ensuring that you have peace of mind. So that way you know that if you get sick or injured or anything along those lines, it is a covered claim, that you have money coming in to protect your overall standard of living. And we talked a little bit about human capital, which is a little bit high level, but really what human capital is your ability and your earning power from now today to what you're earning until the day that you decide you want to retire, right? And considering everything else in between. But the idea around income protection is really just to ensure that you have money coming in those times that you cannot physically go to work because of an accident, an injury, an illness, or anything along those lines that is covered underneath those benefits. So again, work with a professional, find out how your income protection plan looks. And then you can kind of design that and build that out a little bit more. But again, take a look at what's being offered through your company and your employer, because typically there are some good benefits that are provided through there as well. So when we look at that saving, investing, and insurance side of it, we look at really how that's broken down from the three categories. Number one, saving, is really about just parking your money, in risk-free investments like bank accounts or anything that's pretty liquid, right? So savings account at a bank, I can put it in there, earn a small interest, pull it out, relatively liquid to me. Your investments are things that are a little bit more longer term outlook, right? So equities or mutual funds or anything along those lines that's going to potentially create a bigger value is where your investments fall. Then in your insurance is really all the things that really kind of help you cover your risks. And when we look at the insurance side, investing, et cetera, it really just kind of comes down to is how do you risk transfer? That's really what insurance is designed to do. And that's why we say that it's such an integral part to anybody's retirement plan is to ensure that they have risk taken off the table. But you only do that through the aspects of insurance, like we talked about, auto insurance, home, renters, life, income protection. By transferring risk and getting rid of those, it gives you the ability to be a little more free-flowing in how you put your money away long-term, because you have that risk protection a little bit on the back end. So as we dive a little bit deeper into some of these things, I really want to start here. So budgeting becomes really, really important. And the reason why budgeting becomes important is that you never want to overexert, what it is you're putting away, because it doesn't create consistency in how you're putting it away. So when we look at this, it's just your budget, your future. So, this is just a, overall suggested overall budget. You're going to take a look at what you have and really figure out how that works, right? So 30% going to housing, 30% going to other living expenses, maybe 5% going to healthcare premiums, 10% going to some type of saving and investing, 10% to pay off debt, and then 15% to help cover your transportation. So budgeting is important because it allows you, again, to create consistency in how you put money away. And the hardest part for a lot of people is really creating that idea of how much can I commit to every single month. But you also, with that budget, allows you to not press the panic button when you feel like things get tight, right? Because you have that plan in mind of what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and a budget really helps with that. So then the key reasons to save, number one is emergencies. 2 is vacations. 3 is maybe a new car, home, schooling, or really the future. And then the last one is really about the ability to be safe. So the reason why we have these up here is because number one, with saving, we want to make sure that your money is relatively liquid. So what that means is that you have the ability to get to it without any penalties or anything along those lines. So either I put money into a savings account, I have an emergency come up, I need new tires on my car. Great. I can go to the bank, I can pull out a little bit of money, pay for that, right? So what you don't want to try to do is you don't want to have to try to tap into investment accounts or retirement accounts or anything along those lines, because if you do, there could be penalties and all those other things apply. And that's, that's not going to work very well. So other key reasons really to invest. Number one is retirement, education for either yourself or your children, help you increase your wealth overall, your future goals, to help build your assets. Maybe it's to buy a business, or maybe it's to help you really kind of outpace inflation, right? So again, the reason why we look at investing is these are those long-term goals, right? These are the things that we're trying to eventually get to where we don't have to work anymore and we can ride off into the sunset. But in order to do that, you have to go back to the basics of, again, saving and budgeting. Because if you can do that, then all the money that you're saving and putting away for investing long-term, that can stay there. That if we're trying to dip into money that's earmarked long-term for the future, basically you're going to be starting over every year. And that's where frustration kicks in and people just go, I'm done. Right? I don't want to do it anymore. I'm going to hide my money underneath the mattress, hope that it goes, and then eventually we'll get it all figured out, right? So by kind of having this planned out and having this really organized, it allows you to really, again, be a little bit more intentional in how you put money away, but then be very disciplined on not touching the things that you earmarked for long-term down the road. So when we talk about inflation, right, it's been a hot topic, right? Inflation over the course of last year, we can all say it's been a little insane. But when you look at overall inflation, the idea around, investing and putting money away that gives you a little bit of higher interest, that's kind of the intent. Helps you really work to outpace that. If you have a savings account that's paying you very minimal, that's not going to really outpace the overall inflation, right? But again, it's liquid. So it's all about balance and how you figure that out. And we'll talk about that. So purchasing power of inflation over time, this is another really big reason of why you want to invest and put money away. Because if you are 30 years old right now and you want to retire at age 65, we probably know that the cost of most things are going to go up over the next 35 years. So we need to make sure that we have investments that are keeping pace or outpacing inflation to ensure that maybe the $50,000 that I need today is really going to probably equate to about $75,000 or more in 35 years. So how do I grow that money to get to that point where I have that access of the future funds of what I need, right? And that's really inflation. So inflation is just really your purchasing power of your dollar continuously going down. So if you look on this slide in the red, it says $1 in 1913 is now $29.83 in today's dollars, right? That's crazy. So imagine what that's going to look like long term. So as you save, and again, that's why it's so important to start early, and that's why it's so important to create consistency and a lot of discipline in how you put money away, because you have to build and compound over time. And when we look at this is, when should we start saving or when should we start investing? And the answer is as early as and often as you possibly can. And if you look at this, it says, what does it take to reach a sum of $1 million? So it says if you plan to retire at age 65, you like to have $1 million in your pocket at that time. So if you earn 6% rate of return, how much would you need to save each month to get there? And it talks about it all depend on when you started. So if you look at age 20, $361.04 per month is what you'd have to save at 6% to have $1 million by the time you're 65. 698, 1435, 3421. So really, the earlier that you start, now that does not mean that if you're starting later in life that you can't catch up. Right? It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that you're destined for a terrible retirement. It doesn't mean any of that at all. It just means that you have to find other ways to start putting money away, and you may have to put a little bit more of it. Or you need to look at your retirement goals, right? Maybe it's not at $1 million. Maybe you have to learn to spend less in retirement. Maybe you need to retire a little bit later, Maybe you're going to have to work a little bit longer. Maybe you're going to have to get a second job or a part-time job. Doesn't mean that retirement is ruined forever. Just means that it may be delayed. But again, working with somebody that kind of help figure out what that looks like for you will be really, really vital. So the earlier that you start, the better off you are long term, because you get the power of what we call the ninth wonder of the world. So the ninth wonder of the world, in my opinion, is really the effect of compounding interest. So money compounding over time on itself over and over and over, which eventually equates to a larger overall sum of money. So that's really the value. If you go back to this slide here, it talks about the earlier that you start. And the reason why is because the earlier you start, the more that your money compounds over the course of your life. And eventually that's going to be a relatively or a bigger payoff overall long term, because your money had time to accumulate. You can save less to earn more based off of how that's going to look overall. So then the other part in regards to investing or putting money away is what we call diversifying or diversification of your money. So it's kind of the old concept of not putting all your eggs in one basket. So it gives you the ability to really understand, what type of investor, what type of saver that you are. Are you aggressive? Do you like that? Do you like that drop of the roller coaster and the up again of going up? Is that one of those things that you just really cannot stomach? Does it kind of give you, queasy stomach as you even think about going up and then dropping that far? So we always talk about, you need to, number one, do what's called a risk tolerance. And a risk tolerance is going to basically tell you what type of investor and saver that you are. And then what happens from there is that professional that you're working with will be able to take that concept, will figure out how much money you want to invest, and basically help you allocate your money accordingly based on your ability to stomach and take on risk. We don't want you to overexert risk, right? Because we don't want you to be worried about everything every single day. But we also don't want you to be so conservative you don't have an opportunity to earn anything as well. So again, investing in all those things, one of the things that we always talk about is that, emotion does play very high into investing and saving long term. And we always tell people, the thing is, don't eliminate your emotion. You just need to figure out a way to, to kind of appease it, right? To appease the emotion. And the way that you do that is through understanding how your money is invested through diversified investments. But that's going to come down to your ability to take on and consume risk. And that's what that risk tolerance will tell you. But it's really important when you look at it long term. So then when we start kind of breaking this down a little bit further, we talk about really the three different buckets of money. So there's really three very defined buckets of money when people look at saving and putting money away long term. So number one is the taxable stuff. So the taxable money is going to be a lot of those things that you have access to pretty quick, right? So your savings, your savings accounts, any CDs or money markets that are there. Again, you need to have money in those accounts because you need money for an emergency fund. But it's all about, understanding what your ratio is based on what you want overall long term, right? And it's not a one size fits all scenario, but the goal really should be is to find a way to get to as tax free as possible long term. So the taxable account, the advantage are, I guess, the characteristics are it is 100% taxable in the account. The money is very liquid. It does help you create an emergency fund. You should have probably at least about 6 months of living expenses inside of that, right? On a tax deferred side, those are the things that like a 401k or an IRA or a 403b or sometimes annuities. So a 401k that, if you have that, as an employer, then again, you need to take advantage of that. You need to take a look at, what is the match that you get, and then contribute up to that match overall and find other means of saving to put other additional money away if you have additional funds to spend towards that. But again, the tax deferred side of that is great, right? You're getting a tax deduction now, but eventually what'll happen is that, when you hit retirement, that tax deferral will come due. So now all the money that you start taking out of that account will now be taxed at your ordinary income tax rate. And if you are one of those people that believe that taxes will go up at some point in the future, then those are the things that you need to consider as well. Lastly, the last bucket is what we call your tax-free or tax favorable. And what that means is that you're putting money in right now, and you're basically delaying all those things out. Then when you start pulling money out on the back end, it's all going to be back tax-free back to you. So it has to be federal and state tax exempt or tax-free. You don't pay any capital gains or gain taxes on it. And distributions don't cause your Social Security to be taxed once you're there as well, too, because it does not count as provisional overall income. So those are really the three different buckets of money. Now, again, the intent is that you should have money in each one of these buckets in some capacity. What that looks like, that's for you and a professional to really kind of talk about, to figure out what your ratios are to get you to that point of a tax-free income in retirement, but you will have some type of money in all three buckets. There's really no way to avoid having, really, you could, I guess, but work with a professional, sit down, create that conversation, and then find out what your ratios really should look like. So then really when we talk about just the 5 steps, right? If you're going to take any 5 things away, here's what I would kind of do. So number 1, you need to know who you are, right? Know yourself. Sounds goofy, but you need to know whether are you a saver or are you a spender? Because that's going to dictate how you budget, how you put money away, and what you need to have access to as you continue to move forward, right? So knowing yourself is big. Number 2 is you need to know what it is you're trying to accomplish with your investments. Are you trying to accomplish something long term? Are you trying to establish something for maybe the midterm? Maybe it's buying a business. Maybe it's just accumulating some money for a little while. So knowing what your goal for those investments are will be really big and important, because that's going to make a determination of how that money is being pushed out collectively. Number 3 is diversify your portfolio. We talked about that, right? You need to diversify your portfolio from the investment side, but then also diversify your portfolio risk. So i.e. meaning ensuring that you have the right type of insurance in place to take risks away off the table, allow you more free flow, save long term of what you're trying to accomplish. Number 4 is you want to always conduct regular reviews. Your plan should never be a set it and forget it. Your plan should be monitored and should be viewed and reviewed every single year to ensure that you're keeping pace. Your insurance needs change over time. Your investment objectives and retirement objectives change over time. So you need to ensure that your plan is keeping up with the changes in your life, because life happens so quick. And one of the things that we don't always take into consideration to do is go back and go, oh, wait, I need to go change this because this just happened, right? So conducting those annual reviews with the professional you're working with will be really important. And then lastly is just ensuring that you're doing some type of rebalancing of your plan, right? Whether it's pulling different investments in, getting rid of other investments, whether it is changing the way your insurance products look or whatever that may be, but ensuring that you're rebalancing what your portfolio looks like. It doesn't need to be on an annual basis, but again, whatever's going to be suited for you. That's what we kind of look at that as well, as in addition to. So I appreciate your guys' time. I know we went through a lot, relatively fast, but really, I guess, again, the biggest takeaway to consider is, insurance and investing and saving for retirement should be a conversation had together. I think our industry sometimes does a kind of a silent effect of trying to separate the conversations, but in reality, they belong together. You really can't do one effectively without the other. So I would definitely encourage anybody out there to take the time to learn how your insurance affects your investments and how your investments will affect your insurance, but then make sure that you are having these conversations together and building a plan that consists of both, and they're monitored and viewed regularly.